Imagine a place where the crops in the field decide who lives and who dies. A place where the true harvest is not corn or beans, but a crushing, unending silence broken only by the bark of automatic gunfire. This is not a scene from a dystopian film. This is the daily reality for millions of people in the Mexican state of Sinaloa, a land of rugged mountains and fertile valleys that has become the epicenter of a conflict so vast and so deeply entrenched that it has effectively birthed its own nation, a shadow state within the state. It is the kingdom of the Sinaloa Cartel, a criminal enterprise of such staggering power, wealth, and brutality that it does not merely challenge the authority of the government, it often operates as the government itself. This is the story of an organization that has turned violence into a currency and fear into its most powerful law. A story that begins in remote laboratories and ends in the quiet desperation of a million broken homes. To understand the sheer scale of this enterprise, you must first look not at a map of territories, but at a map of human pain. In the labyrinthine mountains of Sinaloa, hidden away from the world, are the secret laboratories. Here, men who are called chefs work not with food, but with a chemical arsenal. They are not cooking meals, they are cooking death. With cold, clinical precision, they mix and synthesize substances like fentanyl, a synthetic opioid so potent that a few grains of powder, an amount you could balance on the tip of a pencil, are enough to kill a human being. This is not the old world of growing poppies or coca leaves. This is industrial-scale pharmaceutical warfare. The product of these labs is packaged and sent north, across a border that is more of a suggestion than a barrier, flooding into American cities and towns. For the cartel, this is a business transaction of unparalleled efficiency. For communities thousands of miles away, it is the source of an epidemic of loss, a wave of overdoses and funerals that trace a direct chemical line back to these hidden rooms in the Sierra Madre mountains. But this business does not run on chemistry alone. It runs on blood. Protecting this empire is an army of young men known as sicarios, hitmen. Many are recruited as teenagers from the very villages the cartel controls, drawn from a life of poverty with promises of money, power, respect, and a sense of belonging that the legitimate world has never offered them. They are given military-grade weapons, assault rifles, rocket launchers, weapons that outmatch what many local police forces possess. Their job is not just to eliminate rivals, it is to enforce a chilling, absolute authority. They are the instruments of a public terror, leaving bodies in the streets as gruesome billboards, messages written not in words but in mutilation. Their violence is performative, designed not just to kill, but to paralyze an entire population with fear. In this world, a uniform means nothing. A badge is not a shield. The cartel's law is the only law that matters, and its enforcers are these boys with old eyes and new weapons, their humanity the first casualty of the war they wage. With money that flows like a river of cash and a private army at its command, the cartel does not simply operate in the shadows. It co-opts the very structures of society in plain sight. This process is called plata o plomo, silver or lead, a bribe or a bullet. Mayors, police chiefs, judges, and military officers are presented with this choice. Many choose the silver. This systemic corruption means that the cartel's influence is in the very bones of the state. It controls which businesses open and which close. It decides who can build a house or transport goods on a highway. It levies its own taxes on commerce. In countless towns, the cartel is the economy, the employer, and the security force. The national government in Mexico City can send in the army, but the soldiers are visitors. The cartel is home. It has roots in the community that run deeper than any temporary military deployment. The state is not absent. It has been hollowed out from within, replaced by a criminal authority that is often more present, more powerful, and more predictable in its ruthless logic than any distant bureaucracy. The true, lasting horror of this reality is measured not in kilograms of drugs or stacks of dollars, but in the silent, aching void of the disappeared. All across Mexico, but with a particular concentration in the cartel's heartland, there are mothers, fathers, wives, and children who are searching. Their loved ones, students, shopkeepers, journalists, activists were taken one day, vanished without a trace, swallowed by the silence the cartel imposes. These families form collectives. They gather with shovels and picks and they dig. They follow whispers and anonymous tips, and they dig in fields, under patios, in shallow graves that reveal not one body, but dozens. They are forensic scientists of grief, searching for a scrap of clothing, a dental record, anything to end the unbearable uncertainty. This is the human landscape of the cartel's rule, a land where mourning cannot even begin because loss has no confirmation, where hope is a cruel, continuous torture. Paradoxically, from this soil of violence and despair, a potent and dangerous culture has grown, narco culture. For the disenfranchised youth in the impoverished barrios, the cartel kingpins are not monsters, they are aspirational figures. They drive the biggest trucks, throw the most lavish parties, and command a level of respect that a school teacher or a factory worker could never achieve. Their lives are mythologized in corridos, folk ballads that detail their exploits, their bravery, and their wealth. This music is the soundtrack to a warped dream, selling a narrative where the ultimate rebellion against a system that has failed you is to join the one organization that is winning. It is a glamorization of the abyss, convincing a new generation that a short, violent life of notoriety is preferable to a long, invisible life of poverty. The cartel, therefore, is not just a criminal employer. It is a dark cultural icon, perpetuating its own legacy by selling a deadly fantasy to the very children whose futures it destroys. In the end, Sinaloa presents us with a terrifying paradox. It is a society that has been utterly ravaged by the drug trade, torn apart by corruption, defined by murder, and haunted by the ghosts of the disappeared. Yet, that same trade has become the inescapable, tragic pillar of its daily life and its local economy. It is the engine of both ruin and sustenance. The Mexican state fights a war that often seems unwinnable not because it lacks courage, but because it is fighting against a hydra that has grown heads deep within its own body politic and within the desperate aspirations of its people. The story of the Sinaloa Cartel is more than a story about crime. It is the story of a failure of institutions, of opportunity, of the social contract. It is the story of what happens when the power to intimidate outstrips the power to protect, when the offer of silver or lead becomes the fundamental question of existence, and when an entire region learns day by terrible day how to live inside a nightmare from which there is no waking.